Did it work?
I,
We're live?
I didn't hear anything, but I saw.
Wait, it's buffering, so it's
Hey
ready.
there. Welcome to the Brian Lambert Show. We are live. Hey, everybody. We're actually live on YouTube and Facebook at the same time. And this is our first ever show. What do you guys think? I hope you like it. Joining me today, we've got Barry Shields, Mark Ondash, and Eric Sterrett. Barry, what do you think of the Brian Lambert Show so far?
Hey, this is perfect. I'm so glad to be here. It's one heck of a hello world moment. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Eric, what do you think? You're raising your red Solo cup.
I am, and it reminds me of the fact that I love that I office in a place where there is a beer, so I can raise a toast to y'all. The only thing missing here, for those that have watched the show for years, is a shovel. If Barry might be able to supply one by the end of the broadcast, but man, it's just great to see these three other faces on a purple backgrounded screen. Thank you for.
What do you mean by a shovel for the first time viewers? What do you mean?
Well, I think that's one of those things. If I told them, I'd have to kill them. Right? It's the golden shovel of the kegerator. A backstory that even I don't know. My Red Solo Cup history go back far to trace the roots of said shovel. Amazing ancestry. I've only heard rumors and tales of old.
Well, maybe one time we'll be able to do this. All right. So, Mark, welcome. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Awesome to be part of the inaugural Brian Lambert Show. Printing up some documents for us here, but everybody looks great. We're live, and this is where we're supposed to be, Tuesdays, 5 p.m.
Absolutely. And
Eastern.
We're beaming to three places right now: Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and if you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can actually chat, and we'll be able to see the chat in the chat window. So we're going to jump into our first show. This is totally unrehearsed, unscripted. This is how we do it in the digital age. We jump in and figure out things as we go. So what we're going to do is, what's that?
No one will believe this is unscripted.
I'm pretty sure they'll believe it.
We're just tinkering around, right? You know, with that, we're just figuring it out, right? Just messing around and figuring it out.
That's right.
But Brian, what am
I doing?
See, are you kidding me? Of course we're learning, and we're just, a bunch of guys living a life, driving a minivan. That's it.
Well, speak for yourself.
Shoveling on the ends. Yeah.
I have an SUV.
I transitioned to a truck just so if this is being recorded, I want everyone to know I'm driving a truck now, not a minivan.
If you go to brianlambert.live, you can actually submit show ideas. I encourage you to do that. Go to brianlambert.live and submit your show ideas. The purpose of this is to help navigate the digital age. We'll be exploring everything from AI to technology to change to human behavior, thinking about strategy, all the way to actually deploying AI, using AI, and more importantly, figuring out how we all together as people who want to figure things out can cope with all this complexity and change at one time and navigate through it. So every episode will have a theme. We'll explore that theme in a bunch of different segments, and we'll encourage participation. We'll give out prizes. We'll give out freebies. We'll help people ask questions, encourage them to challenge us. And also, in that vein, being the first episode, we're going to actually use the format on ourselves. So the first theme for our first show is welcome to the Brian Lambert Show. This is the show. So the first segment here is, what the heck is the Brian Lambert Show? So what do you think, Barry? What do you think it is? with
Well,
your
I think it's casual. I think it's presenting what we're finding as we do the work in some really great corporations, and it's trying to figure out what is it that we need to do to empower people to choose to be more productive. Let me explain that maybe. It seems like folks still want to be spoon-fed, right? So how do I do my new job? And what I'm finding is that we're still building formal courses out there when in fact, if you are willing to put in a bit of effort and figure it out in terms of the different AI tools, it's not about the tools, it's about what you're wanting to do. But if you're willing to say, oh, look, I have this article. I'm going to copy this article, paste it in, have AI rewrite it in alignment to my favorite book and the principles in that favorite book. Then you've got something bespoke. What I'm finding is people don't even have that thought. So what if we have this show where we share what people are doing that increases their productivity, that may lead to them not needing a personal coach, not necessarily needing to go through all the training that they've gone through in the past, being able to write a 30, 60, 90-day plan when you've never even written a 30, 60, 90-day plan in your life. You write it by 5 o'clock and your new boss says, wow, great job. To me, this is a show about giving people the ability to let go of imposter syndrome.
Nice. I can deal with that. Mark, what do you think? What is the Brian Lambert show to you?
Thanks for making that easy to follow up with, Barry. Well, being that it's our inaugural show, I mean, it's an opportunity, I guess, for us to share what we do and how we do it. A lot of the messaging that we have, right, around, hey, digital first, job second. What's that mean, and why is that important, and how we're supporting people on their journey. It's a lot more than just optimizing work by leveraging AI and being more creative and innovative. It's settling in and learning how to be comfortable and realizing that you don't need to be a tech person to be able to manage and leverage and take advantage of digital tools. And I think the other thing the show is, as Brian said, our mantra kind of is we got to figure it out as we're doing it. And so I think we'll always do that and show that that's kind of the foundation of how we approach things. Yeah, I think we have a sense of advocacy and a sense of urgency, but at the same time, I think we're enjoying what we're doing, and I think hopefully that's coming across.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, what do you think? He's probably texting with his kids.
He's ordering a pizza.
Uh-oh, is he muted? He might be muted. We cannot hear you. All right, we'll come back to you, and you can chime in on that. All right, so I agree with that. I love the idea of helping people figure it out, engaging in the process, jumping in, learning as they go, and also making it okay to make mistakes along the way. As obviously we're not exactly super polished. These guys didn't even know I was inviting them to the show. We just jumped on and did it. So that's part of this. That's part of it. Figure out as we go. So in that view, let's talk about the digital dilemma. And that's a section that we're going to have on the show. First, we're going to open it like we did, tell people what's going on, get some perspectives on what the theme means. Then we'll go into the next segment, which will be the digital dilemma. And in this one, this is why do we even have a show in the first place? And the dilemma here is the idea that something like this has to be super polished and super high end in order to be relevant. And really, me in the digital age, it's about actually having the conversation and solving problems together. So I think the misconception about doing something today is that it has to be perfect, it has to be right, it has to be spot on. People are going to judge us if we're not, versus, hey, this is new for everybody. Let's jump in and figure it out. And the hypothesis that I have is that by jumping in and figuring it out, we'll be able to make things more productive and, more importantly, learn as we go.
Hey, Brian, I've got a question for you on that. So today I heard a statement that said, hey, if we're going to use AI in enablement, we need to have a system in place that validates the AI results. So for context, what I was saying is, we could have an AI overlay on top of playbooks. It would use the retrieval augmented generation, and we could provide bespoke talk tracks to sellers or objections or outreach or what have you. But what's in the playbooks is sort of gospel. So the concern about that overlay of AI was, how are we going to validate it? Because the early and career sellers are just going to take what comes back from AI and regurgitate it. How do we know it's not hallucinating? And how do we give them the skills to validate? Or should we put an expert in place to validate and do a checks and balances on the AI output before we allow the sellers to use it?
Yeah.
Digital dilemma.
Yeah, digital dilemma. Yeah, and I think so for context, for people that don't necessarily understand what you just said, because we're going to get all types, right? And I think we're going to have some explanations for folks, that to understand what game we're playing here. Using an analogy, if we're talking about the game and nobody knows what the game is, it's going to be a lot of cycles to figure that out. But in the big scheme of things, we're always going to be talking about knowledge work, or people who work in the digital and knowledge space that have to create new things or build things together, usually in a global environment, usually distributed, usually on a computer, trying to build something new, deliver something new, sell something new, et cetera. And we're going to talk about that in terms of growth of companies, organizations, and people as we go throughout this show. So we'll always have that lens. And Barry, your background is in sales and helping salespeople sell more. So your idea of a playbook and sales playbooks is to equip salespeople to have those conversations with people. And the questions come up, hey, if we're generating a lot of outputs for salespeople to go use customers, should we validate that at all? Should there be some sort of oversight or governance that helps us ensure that what's being produced is actually accurate, trustworthy, and should be in front of customers?
And brand aligned, yeah.
And then, from a sales perspective, making sure that it's brand aligned. And that is a digital dilemma, because with anything new technology that comes out, people want to make sure that it's governed. And I think the first question I would ask was, was that happening before? Was everything that salespeople produced, governed in that way?
Well, the thing is, the problem before was they couldn't find an access, so they were just either lost or they built their own.
Right. Yeah. And in reality, though, would you agree that most things that salespeople produced, nobody had really awareness of, and
right,
perhaps was happening without anybody knowing? And I think that's going to continue. But in the context of corporate assets that are sanctioned for use with other people, there was oversight on those brand documents, documentation for customers, sales pitches, if you will, anything that was customer facing, there was governance on that before.
But there's not governance on what comes back from the large language model in terms of a bespoke talk track. And, the input to the large language model was whatever that was written by marketing. What came back from the large language model was its best opportunity to create something for this specific phone call or sales meeting. Yeah. And so then the seller then goes and says exactly what came out, hallucinations or not. And what are we going to do about that? It's not brand aligned. So are we just going to...
Yeah, what you're saying, Barry, is that the guardrails were on the input, not on the output.
Yeah, that's right. The guardrails are on the input, to Brian's point. But should we put guardrails on the output? And if we do, how do we do that?
Well, I think just some of those parameters that Brian just mentioned, right? Okay, well, how do you determine whether it's accuracy? For instance, salesperson puts in information as he or she is doing research to build an email, right? To do some prospecting. And how accurate is that information? Maybe you go to someone within your organization, a value engineer, solutions consultant, and you validate that this information is accurate before I go out and send something out. And I think that's part of the process. And I think a lot of the more experienced account executives, if we're using that term, that are leveraging, and internal account executives, ADEs, that are leveraging AI are probably doing that. But again, kind of depends on the size of the organization too, and how independent you are within that organization, right? Am I an independent contractor who's a salesperson who has access to all these products, and maybe there isn't that oversight as there are with some organizations. So I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling about that, but
I think the idea that there needs to be governance is a good one. I think it has to do with one, when you go to any of these tools, ChatGPT, Claude, you don't necessarily, the company doesn't know what's going back and forth there at all right now.
Right.
There's no visibility into that. So if you have something, though, that's rolled out by corporate and encouraged everybody to use it, yes, it should be, there should be some sort of way to observe what's going back and forth. And then there should be some sort of, and this is one of my theories, is that there will eventually be some sort of AI governance, AI quality assurance type of role that looks at what it's outputting and makes adjustments and tunes this internal tuning engine to talk to a large language model.
AI checking on AI.
No, I think that'll be a human. Like the analogy that I would use is in customer service, there was ways to record those phone calls, and then humans would go through and revisit those phone calls and score them. So there was a human oversight of those customer service calls. That's why we have the recording that says at the beginning, this call may be recorded. So if you take that to large language model interactions, because remember, just from a basics perspective, trillions of dollars went into these large language models. They're sitting over here. ChatGPT has an interface so you can talk to it, but there are ways that companies can have their own set of data and still talk to that large language model and keep their stuff private. And that's what more companies are going to start doing. So when you do that, then you just like email, just like using messaging and Slack, you can get visibility into what's going back and forth and what's being said to those data repositories, and then know what's being asked and what's being output. And I think there will be humans in the loop on that. So that's an example of a digital dilemma with my point of view on that. And that's the segment of, the digital dilemma. So I want to wrap that digital dilemma segment up and move into the third segment, which is the figuring it out segment. So let's pretend that in this scheme of figuring out this show, we had to figure it out. How did we go about figuring out how to do this show? And then if we wanted to, we could talk about it in terms of figuring out this AI governance challenge. So from that perspective, a lot went into figuring out this show, but at some point we just have to hit send and launch the show. But behind the scenes, there was a lot. We had to figure out who's going to be on the show. We had to figure out a structure of the show. We had to figure out the technology to handle the show. We had to figure out what type of information we want to present, what kind of feeling and vibe do we want to have. And then it comes down to, at some point, you have to go live. And, we've been going live for 20 minutes. So in essence, we have figured out how to go live for 20 minutes. But does that mean that we figured out the entire show? No, it hasn't. Because, that we'll look back at this show 2 years from now and laugh at how clunky we are with like keyboards and, people typing, chairs squeaking, all this other stuff happening in this first show, which is part of the figuring it out process.
That's right.
And as we get better, we'll learn how to,
Eric's in some celestial altar, and I'm on
he's in a very peaceful state, which I think, we should give that a thumbs up. So what do you guys think for the figuring it out? How can we improve our own productivity? How can we make this show better? Embracing the spirit of let's just figure this out. What type of things can we do to make the show better? How would we go about it? And how would we continuously improve?
Yeah, I heard another thing.
Go ahead, Barry.
Sorry, go ahead. Well, I was just going to share. I heard another thing that the other day I thought was really interesting, and that was to just do it and watch it back, but to be sure that you share it. So, what I love is the mindset of just going ahead and sharing it. So imagine you wrote a blog and you just shared it on Twitter without even a single pass at a review. I did that today. I wrote a sort of a plan for the coming calendar year for what I'm responsible for, and I presented it to my leader, and it evoked a reaction. The truth is, I did have to take a 1 hour break. It was a great conversation. It wasn't negative feedback. It was me discovering what's important to him. But because I had a point of view, because I was brave enough to share it half-baked, I've accelerated achieving the outcomes. And I think that's what we want to get to is how do we help people be brave enough to share their first drafts, even with someone who, decides whether they get to stay employed or not. That's what we need.
Love it. Eric, what do you think about just jumping in and creating something together like that?
First of all, can you hear me again?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, that's a win. We should celebrate that.
We should start with hearing each other. It took me 2 candles to get there. No, I actually went out and participated as part of the audience, which was cool. It is working from the other angles, and I love that. I love kind of the common theme here is the learning by doing, which is a favorite for many years, as Brian knows, and I love the word I'll add to what Barry shared is permission. If we're bold enough to give the audience permission to do what Barry did to doing right now, and learn by doing, with the caveat that there's no crying in baseball, shame in learning in LBD, right? And that y'all can make fun of us if you want. Better people who have used the wing platform and crushed it. I bet they didn't have the 2 candles up episode 1, or an interstellar gumball to live inside of, or talk of a shovel somehow interspersed with red Solo cups there.
And I think,
Um,
and we're in the digital command. I have the digital commands post, the digital command center.
He's at 160 miles above the earth.
And when I talk and do this, it's awe-inspiring.
it is. I feel like you've got the whole world in your digital hands.
That's right. So I like the figuring it out piece of this, and we're going to do that and spend some time. And I might show some frameworks from my new book, AI Lead,
Awesome.
that you can look at. We'll actually try to tackle things. We may actually open up a Miro board and work on that together, all of us, and invite our audience to try to do the same. Right. So the next segment, and that would be a longer segment, this figuring it out segment. Then we would go into segment 4, which is a bit of a challenge. And what we would encourage people to do in the challenge is to ask, well, how do I do this too? How do I jump in and do that? And, the challenge that I would lay out for everybody here on this first show is, if you are paying attention and are listening, let us know and put yourself out there. Go to brianlambert.live and submit a show idea, or chat into the chat. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, chat something in, and we'll be able to respond. That's what we want to do in this segment, is to encourage that participation. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I'm going to share as a participant, before I forget, because it asked me for a password when I wanted to submit my show idea, just FYI.
All right.
You just create your own. It doesn't matter. They just have to hit number at the bottom. It'll take it.
I tried purple colored parsnip, but it didn't work.
All right, we'll look at that. Yeah, so
it's cool. It was neat how you can submit a show idea. I really like that.
Awesome. So that'll be a short one. Do the quick challenge just like we did there. Encourage everybody to participate with us. The next one, we'll do a bit of a round table. And what we'll do is we're going to drop a topic on the table, which is, in this case, the Brian Lambert Show. We're going to drop it on the table. And we're all going to have a perspective. So Barry will be, we'll ask him to play a role. Perhaps his is around how do we communicate what this is. My role will be something like the idea that this show is needed to figure things out. Mark, your role will be something like, hey, I'm new to this. You guys have to explain this to me in a way that makes sense. And then, Eric, your job is like, well, how do I take this back? How do I bring this show, which is, I don't even know what's going on, but hey guys, what can I bring back to my organization? So we would have those roles, and we would drop the topic on the table, and we would have a digital rumble on that, a round table discussion. So let's drop the show on the table here. And, the concept of the show, as I explained, is to tackle these issues and to come up with a theme and explore that theme from a lot of different angles, go through these segments, encourage that participation, and bring in anything that we can bring in from our perspective to help with that. So let's rumble.
Yeah, I think the why is, with you as an author and someone who is reading the book, so we all have our favorite authors, but let's say you're reading, the book, and you either skim through something, didn't understand something. There's really an awe-inspiring kind of thing that really motivates you and energizes you when you get to talk to the author, right? And so that, I think, is why we want to provide the show, right? Is, Brian, to sort of give you, what were you opportunities to say, what were you thinking when you wrote this chapter or this component, or that seems a bit out there. I'm not, I'm entangled as it were. And I'd really like to figure out straight from you. So I think that when you share on X, when you share on Facebook and LinkedIn, or, on YouTube, et cetera, we want to give people the opportunity to see and talk to you, not just attend a book signing where you say hello and shake their hand, and then to just provide a regular opportunity for that to happen, where people always know that they're going to be able to come back, like they can various podcasts, for their favorite actor or actress. And that's what excites me most, right? Is just giving people that opportunity to become addicted to learning from you on a regular basis.
Yeah, appreciate that. I agree.
Well, I'd say so. If we're roundtabling it about our show today, right, and from the perspective of the role of, well, I'm new to this. So if someone shows up, right, hey, who's monitoring the chat? I'm assuming, that Brian, maybe you're doing that, or maybe somebody takes turns in doing that, and they haven't submitted a topic, and of course, their first show is going to be, well, what's this all about? This topic. It was interesting, and I'm here with these people. And what am I supposed to do? Is this a webinar, or is this a conversation? Right. So, having a way of, again, kicking it off like every show. Here's what we do. The first 2 minutes in our intro. Here's what it's about. So people that show up for the first time feel that, because most people in these may be used to it. To these types of applications, but sometimes they may not be confident enough or feel foolish sometimes when they want to ask something or jump into the conversation. So is it just us as 4 or 5 individuals within Digital Command that are driving these conversations, or how much of the floor are we giving to other people? Will that be simply through chat?
Well, I'd like to see a world where there's a lot of activity after the show. So the idea is we have a standard flow. We can have guests, as it were. We could break the standard flow. We could go on location, all these things. But I think at some point it'll be hard for us to keep up with the chat during the live show. And we want to drive a conversation after, or maybe even before the show, so that people are not just providing feedback, but they're figuring it out. That's how they debate one another. They have a rumble with one another. We won't even be able to keep up with all of that. So
life of its own afterwards.
Yeah. And even, because what I think people align to, or at least I do, and I always think the world thinks just like me because I'm an only child. I just think that the non-formal, informal nature of it, is really inviting. Like for me, I won't watch formal like television shows anymore. I can't stand it.
Why is that?
Well, it's too scripted. Like the one TV show that I like, it's on Netflix called Unreal. It's a TV show that is scripted about a reality show. So in other words, they're pretending to make and produce a reality show in the TV show. And
kind
so,
of Tropic Thunder.
What'd you say?
It's kind of like Tropic movie.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because real life shows up. That's what this is. This is real life. It's instant. It's in the moment. It's to start the conversation, not end it. And you just doing your thing.
Love it.
So then another question would be, again, relation to, all right, our usual and maybe unusual staff meeting that we have around topics. How do we weave in to what we're doing in our one stream?
And the Brian Lambert show.
Brian Lambert.
Yeah,
show.
well, let's talk about that. Let's go
Right.
first. Go to Eric because I do want to wrap this up here in a couple minutes and try to get through the segment. But before we go on, let's get Eric's point of view from he's taking it back here in the rumble, the roundtable rumble.
So I've only got words. Is that shocking?
It is.
So what?
Wah, wah, wah.
No,
Ooh.
what? Y'all talk to each other, patted each other on the back. What does that mean to me? What can I say and go get shit done with? And this is the point where I would wrap it up with the answers to that. So much would be just do it. Learn by
Go figure
doing.
it out.
Figure it out by you hear fail fast and all that stuff, but get out and do it. Do it digitally. Do AI. Don't get freaked out that other people have already been doing AI and you haven't been doing AI. They're not experts. Nobody is.
Yep.
It's too fast for everybody. Use it. Check it before you hit send, but follow the Barry model. And once you've checked it as a human being for anything AI hallucinorific, get it out there. Be bold. That's my number one so what for today, and it's actionable. And I urge everyone in the audience to just do it. Go learn by doing, and tell us what happened. To Barry's point, go do it now. Give yourself 60 minutes to post a blog, and then give us a link to it on the Digital Command LinkedIn at mention us, and we'll give you some props and chime in. Just do at Digital Command on LinkedIn, and we'll keep the party going, folks.
Yeah, and if you go to the brianlambert.live, you can see that there are links at brianlambert.live to social medias. You can go there. You can definitely like the YouTube page and the Facebook page, and it will notify you when we're going live. We will eventually get to a live show schedule, so you can participate in real time on those and mark your calendar for the next episode. Current vision is to do this weekly, but eventually this would become a daily show where we would explore real-time topics, news, trends, anything that's come out from our different perspectives. And that's the vision for us. And we would cover, to Eric's point, we would get into the more real-time, what's been happening between the shows, and answer people's questions, provide real-time tools and advice. We'll probably have a listener feedback session that Eric can bring back what he's seeing from audience members. And we'll even run some polls, live contests. We'll give things away to people who are participating and putting themselves out there here in the digital age.
Look out for the Purple Edge out today.
Yeah, there's a newsletter that came out on LinkedIn. When you like that page on the LinkedIn page under Digital Command, it's called the Purple Collar Edge, and we'll be able to see your comments there as well. So plenty of opportunities to get involved. And I want to thank Barry and Mark and Eric for jumping on here with our unscripted first show. And I'm going to call it, 39, 40 minutes in. This has been our first show. I think we did a great job. We jumped in. And thank you so much, guys, for participating in this.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, all. See you all soon.